You ever meet someone whose silence doesn't feel empty, but full? Yeah, that was him. I was 26 when I met Noah. He was 28. Quiet, thoughtful, with a voice that sounded like it was used to being an afterthought. We met at a friend's game night. He beat me at Scrabble without cracking a smile, but I caught the way his ears turned pink when I laughed at his word choices. A week later, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. He asked like it was borrowed bravery, like someone else's courage had worn off just before he spoke. But I said yes. And that's how I found out. Over coffee, during one of those vulnerable stumbles people make when they're trying to impress you by not trying, he admitted, "I've never done this before." At first I thought he meant dating me, but no, he meant dating at all. He had never kissed anyone, never held hands romantically, never been on a date. 28 years old, and I was his very first everything. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was it awkward? Sometimes, sure. Was it endearing? Also, yes. But more than anything, it was gentle. Noah approached intimacy like it was a language you'd only read about in books. Every hug was hesitant, every touch was a question mark, and every kiss was careful, like he was memorizing it for later. But here's the part I didn't expect. He wasn't bad at love. He was brilliant at it, in his own quiet way. He remembered everything I told him, not just the important stuff, the small stuff, that I liked my coffee with oat milk, that I was afraid of frogs, that my favorite sound in the world was distant thunder. He'd text me when it rained just to say, "Thought of you." That kind of thoughtfulness, you can't teach that. But there was a stillness in him that intimacy couldn't quite reach, like part of him lived behind a glass wall, watching things happen from just outside the room. We dated for 4 months, long walks, deep talks, hand-holding like it meant something, which, for him, it did. But there were moments when I felt like I was waiting for someone who hadn't fully arrived. I'd lean into him on the couch, and he'd smile, but he wouldn't lean back. I'd open up about a bad day, and he'd listen, but I'd catch him looking down, not knowing how to hold my sadness. It wasn't lack of effort, it was like intimacy overwhelmed his system. Like his solitude was a place he had decorated with care, and now I was a guest who didn't quite fit the furniture. Eventually, we had the talk. I told him I cared for him, that he mattered, but that I needed a kind of closeness he wasn't ready to give. Not because he didn't want to, but because he'd spent 28 years learning how to be alone, and only 4 months trying not to be. He didn't argue, he just nodded. We parted ways with no shouting, no crying, no drama. Just a hug that lasted longer than usual and a silence that finally felt like peace. We still talk. Still friends. He sends me music he thinks I'll like. I tell him about the guys I date. He listens, sometimes gives advice, always kind. He's still single, last I heard. Still quiet. Still kind. But something tells me the next time he loves someone, it won't be from behind the glass. And me? I walked away from that relationship with the truth I didn't know I needed. Sometimes the most life-changing romances don't end in love. They end in understanding. And those are the ones that stay with you, quietly, forever.